Get a round of applause. Validate their time. So I introduced all of you, but if you all can, I guess, starting from Mr. Atkins, can kind of, I guess, state, I guess, what qualifies you as a father, like how many kids or grandkids, and then if you can, then expound on what has brought you the greatest joy. The one thing brought you the greatest joy in your fatherhood journey.
Well, as he said, I'm the fatherhood manager. I've got 5 daughters, no sons. I've got each kind of daughter you can imagine. Now, this is my second grandson. I have a grandson who showed up on my doorstep when he was 14 years old. He's Mexican. And I say that because he came across the border by himself at 14 years old, looking for family. And he showed up, he didn't speak English. And we got him in school, and he's very successful now as far as how we can measure success. He owns a couple businesses, and he does very well now. He's only been out of high school for about 3 years. So I'm very proud of him as well. I've got 2 more granddaughters, the older grandson, and this is my youngest grandson. And I think what makes me qualified to talk about being a father was not just the act of being a father, but we were engaged as a family. And that's through the good times, the bad times, through all those times, family was family. They stood by me and I've stood by them. We've been through, you name it, and we've all been there for each other. And I feel like that's what
that brings you the greatest joy as a father or something. One other thing.
All the things that we do. We worry about money, we worry about success, we worry about this, we worry about that. I was born to be a father. That's what I was born to do. And hopefully, I'm not gonna tell you I've always done it well, but I've been there. I've been there.
Bishop Luster, what qualifies you as a father, how many kids, and what brings you the greatest joy, sir?
The amount of children that I have, I have 7 children. I have 15 grandchildren. I think that the greatest joy for me is the fact, first and foremost, that I'm still here. And that all of them are still here. And with that, I've had the opportunity to experience the diversity in rearing 7 children with 7 different personalities. Very unique in each and every one. Just watching the development and the growth of them, then to watch them even now, as I watch them raise their children, is one of the greatest joys that I enjoy.
Mr. Wallace.
My name is Anthony Wallace. I am father of 1 as of October 20th, 2020. And father of a beautiful, beautiful daughter. And I would say the thing that brings me the most joy in being a father is, I guess, just her presence. Just being able to spend time with her, being able to have quality time with her, and knowing that she's dependent on me, I'm loving on her, but also she's loving on me. And I just really appreciate the bond that we have that's growing, and it's something that this is a bond that can't be broken. And so that's what brings me the most joy about fatherhood.
Mr. Rozzell.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dave Rozzell. I serve as a pastor and teacher for the Way of Yeshua Fellowship and Ministries. It's a home-based ministry that we started in 2004. So it has expanded and contracted, But I am qualified to be a father, much like what Bishop Luster said. I have 6 children. grandchildren, and as of last Saturday, 9 great-grandchildren. And my oldest children, my children range in age from 40, well, I have to do it. The top 4 are stair steps, so it's 48, 47, 46, 45, and then 30, 36 and 35 are the children. And then the grandchildren range in age from 29 to 16. And the great-grandchildren range in age from 9 to newborn. And just being able to say that brings me great joy, because I never even expected to be a father, certainly not a grandfather. And I had a great-grandmother who seemed ancient to me when I was a child, so I never saw myself being that as well. But the greatest joy was to be present. Well, let me say something. My 2 oldest are non-biological, but they were 8, 9, 8, 10 when their mother and I were married, and I raised them as women to be women. So I don't call them stepchildren or anything like that. They're my daughters, and we still have a father-daughter relationship today, very closely. But the 4 who are biological, I was actually present in the delivery room to watch them enter into the world. And my oldest daughter, when her head popped out, I saw my face on her head. That was just, I can't even hardly describe it. So, and then I would also caveat to say, having been able to spend some time touching and hugging and kissing on my great-grandchildren has also brought me great joy.
Now, we have panelists here for the individuals in the audience. So before I go any further, are there any questions anybody kind of heard, kind of their some of their story? What brings them the greatest joy? Anybody has any questions for our panelists about fatherhood, or our young fathers or about to be fathers? Any questions? Yeah, what you got, James?
So what advice do you guys get for like building a relationship with like a child once they like older, like they not a baby no more?
Bishop. You?
Wow, okay. In listening to Dr. Ruth, I was sitting there, and as I was listening to her, I realized that the growth continues even after a child gets older. You still are contended with the same mental, physical, those same growth patterns. They continue, just on a different level. One thing that I realize about our children, no matter how much we love them and they love us, that once they get to a certain age, their lives can be influenced by outside situations, peers, social media, right down to how they physically growing, and most importantly to me, how they spiritually growing. So to be able to contribute and continue to contribute in those areas of their life is extremely important, because after the baby or child gets past, and I'm not going to say this is either male or female. I have 4 sons. And my grandsons, I'm not going to even start talking about this. And I'm not going to go into, I'm not going to be very verbose and going into the difference at the moment between raising a son and a daughter, because to me, there's a difference. You love them equally, but there's a difference when you're raising your sons and preparing them for a world that they have to be men in. And then raising your daughters to be queens, to come up and know how to choose the right man even for their lives. But I think more directly to your question is the continuance in building and maintaining not just a relationship, but a healthy relationship through all of the hard and difficult times, and you will experience that. Because again, remember, they're influenced by other entities. So being able to maintain a healthy relationship is going to be extremely. My oldest son is 48, I think. Yeah, he's 48. And yet and still, I have to work on keeping a healthy relationship with them. My youngest is 28. So again, being able to work on keeping those relationships healthy is extremely important.
Yeah, well, also being a father who has grown children, and I have 4 daughters and 2 sons. The biggest challenge once they, was while they were becoming adults. And listen, I believe in being totally transparent. What you see is what you get. And I follow my lead from Yeshua. I say what I mean, and I mean what I say. And sometimes it gets me in trouble, but just like Yeshua, I'm determined to do my Father's will. And so let me say this, that it was a little more difficult for me as a father raising my daughters than it was to raise my sons. Not that, my daughters were bad or anything like that. It's just that there are certain things that they were experiencing at different times in their lives that being a man, I couldn't relate to that. I couldn't relate to them coming on their period. I couldn't, but I didn't know how to do hair until I had a granddaughter, I had to do her hair and stuff like that. And I got the greatest compliment. She came home one day and said that her friends, she was in maybe like the 3rd or 4th grade, maybe 5th grade, and she said, no, 4th grade, and she said, my friend said, who did your hair? I said, my grandpa. They said, oh, he can do hair. So that made me feel kind of good. But my daughters, between them, I have, 6 grandchildren between them. And all of them were born out of wedlock. And that's the thing that I struggled with. None of my children were born out of wedlock, except when I was 16, I got a girl pregnant who said it was my son, my child. Never saw him. Her mother made her put the baby up for adoption. So I may have a 50-something-year-old son out there somewhere that I've never seen. But as far as the other children, and even my one son who has 3 children, all born out of wedlock. And I'm really, I kind of struggle with that because I was born out of wedlock. I didn't find out until I was maybe 19 years old. And it really jarred me as a person to find out that and to find out the circumstances surrounding it. And so when I started thinking about maybe one day being a father or being married, I just didn't want to have children out of wedlock. I didn't want to continue that. But yet it skipped a generation, and now all of my children who have children, they were born out of wedlock. And a couple of my daughters have made some really bad choices in my opinion, and as it has played out. So those are the types of challenges, but to maintain the type of relationship where they always feel like they can come and talk to you, where you're not judging them and isolating them and pushing them away, then you have an opportunity to help them when they need help and they come to you for help. But if you don't maintain that relationship, because you're always judging them or you're always, putting them down or anything like that, then they won't come to you. They might go talk to Sally or Bobo or somebody who don't know more than they know, And so I'd rather for them to come to me. That's why I'm maintaining a good relationship.
So, Anthony, I guess one question to ask is what's 3 key points of advice you being a young new father would you give to others on their fatherhood journey? what would you say? Maybe some advice you heard from someone
Yeah.
when you started this journey.
My advice would be maintaining your faith, to be number one. Trusting God and knowing that God, in everything, has a purpose and a plan. And He is orchestrated it so. And we don't always see it initially, feel it initially, understand it initially, but God ultimately has, a purpose and a plan in it all. And my faith what has been, foundational for me, to, just keep me in good spirits, and keep pushing and understanding my purpose, and becoming a father. Just like someone else said earlier, you was made to be a father. Yeah, I believe God ordained and orchestrated and created me to be a father. And so I understand that there's purpose for my life in that. The next thing would be just to go to therapy, get counseling. Whether it be for me, I have a spiritual father. Also, am seeing a professional therapist. So I'm just have a support system that people who are supporting me emotionally, mentally, through the trauma that I've experienced and losing my wife. But also just for that, continue to life coaching, support me along the way. So I would say, whether it's get you a mentor, like I said, a spiritual father, just someone who you can talk to, and deal with your generational trauma that we just inherit as Black men, as Black women, in our community, so just be able to deal with you and to help you heal, so that way you can be there for your child. You can be your full self and coming into your whole self as well. And then I think the last one would be just utilize your support system that you have. Build one if you don't have one. But there are plenty of people who have a heart for supporting you. So just make sure that you're not quiet. We have not because we ask not. So make sure that you reach out and let those who want to help you, help you. So.
Doctor, could I
Yeah,
just
please.
piggyback on something also? You can share with the panel, because I think that's something, especially for our community as Black men. We have this thing about sharing. We have this thing about, as Anthony is speaking on, going to someone and exposing ourselves as Black men. Because I think the part of it too is from one generation to another, for us, most of us, and I think God might agree with me, we were always told that, a real man don't cry. In order to be a real man, this is the identity of a real man, and I don't know, for me, just from life experience, and I'm just going to do an infomercial here. My wife is here with me today. Like David said, 43 years we've been together. I did not have to bother about raising a daughter about her period. Thank you, Jesus. The effect of seeing what a woman goes through that time that she's experiencing that, as well as the time. I'm kind of like y'all remember, I was in the delivery room with one of my children. I was so fascinated with it. I was holding my wife's hand on one end. I was busy up there trying to stretch and see with the doctors what they were doing. And the doctor and I, we had this little joke. My daughter came out, and then he turned around and said, "Oh, wait a minute. I think there's another one coming up." I told him, I said, "This one I'm gonna take home with me. That one, I go with you." But I was so fascinated with it that, unlike you, Dave, I'm gonna be transparent. I went into the next delivery room and see another lady having her baby because I was just that fascinated. To experience that and to understand what a woman goes through at that stage when she's having a child. But again, going back to that, I agree totally with you saying. To be able to have that support group, someone that you can go to and sit down and you can be just that transparent. You can open up about what's bothering you for real. I believe that if more of us, as Black men, we had that door, we had that room, and that we would do that, I think that it would contribute even towards being even greater fathers.
Absolutely. Good. I like to have been there when he went into somebody else's.
And I just want to kind of build off that before we go on to another segment. Just kind of piggyback off that. I know 3 of our panelists are ministers, and ministers especially in the Black community, are very important to counseling people during tough times. One question I want to ask the panelists is their knowledge about paternal postpartum depression, and again about how important mental health is to the role of being a father. And I bring that up is because we are seeing that we know men are commit suicide at a higher successful rate than women, and I think postpartum depression in men is not as understood or hasn't been noticed as much. Have our panelists have seen anything like this, or can expound on the importance of mental health and getting that help to the role of being a father?
Well, I'll start. When I read that question, I realized that postpartum depression. First of all, I've been married 4 times. I only had one wife. I've been married 4 times. And 2 of the women whom I married, I had children with. And so I did go through their experience of postpartum depression. And I was very much younger at the time and I was in the Navy. So I wasn't as present as maybe I would have or wanted to be because of my obligations of being in the military. But I did experience their postpartum depression, and I didn't understand it, and they weren't able to articulate it to me because we were, like I said, in my 20s, and so I didn't know what to do for them, And then but in the second go around, I was older. I was in my 30s, and I realized that I was going through something that I didn't realize I had experienced the first time around. But the second time around, I was really going through the whole thing about, because I didn't get a chance to raise the first 2 children because of the separation and eventual divorce. So at the time of the second 2, again, having 2 non-biological daughters, I'm thinking, man, am I going to be able to handle this mentally, emotionally, financially? Right? And like I said, I was in the Navy, and I was trying to figure out, am I going to stay in the Navy? If I get out of the Navy, how am I going to, take care of my family and that type of thing? And so I did, and at the time, it was kind of a rough period in the Navy for me as well, because I was experiencing some racism on my job. And so I kind of found myself in that in-between position that I'm at home and I'm finding trauma here. I go to work, I'm finding trauma there. And I didn't think about at the time, going to some therapy. Because I'm in the military, you go tell your superiors, I think I'm depressed, I need some therapy. But you can forget about chances of promotion or positions of leadership, things like that. So you got to keep all that stuff close to your chest. And so at the time, the only way I was able to really get through that was because of my relationship with the Father. and praying and talking to my pastor at the time, who had children and who could relate to what I was talking about. And he was able to kind of talk me off the ledge, so to speak, because I wasn't thinking about suicide or anything like that. I wasn't thinking about leaving, but I was starting to shut down, and I couldn't afford to do that on my job or in the home. And so he was able to help me understand that every father goes through this kind of stuff. They may not say it, they may not articulate it, you may not can recognize it, but everybody goes through this. And he helped me understand to stop looking at it from a worldly standpoint and look at it from a biblical, a spiritual standpoint. Either you believe what the Bible says or you don't. And the Bible says that my God shall supply all my needs according to his riches and glory by Christ Jesus. And there's no mealy mouth words in there. Nothing is less than all. And it's God supplying it. It's not me having to go out there and rack my brain trying to figure it out. And so once I understood to approach things from that perspective, then I was able to then go beyond that and ask, well, my wife is going through this, well, what can I do for her? And we were able to refer her to some professional counseling that did help her. So I think just opening up about it to somebody, and then for those of you who believe and have faith in God, as Brother Anthony said, you got to go to God about everything, but especially about things that you can't handle on your own.
I have so much I can say. When it was bittersweet for me. I had become a father October 20th, and then October 24th, I lost my wife. And that was not the way it was supposed to go. That was not what I planned. At the time, it was like I was baffled because I'm like, God, is this what you had planned? And he did. But it was hard. It was hard for me to understand. So I was at a place in my life where I didn't. I was asking myself, what am I going to do? What do I do? Where do I go from here? And just to give you a little bit of background on me, I grew up with the privilege of being raised in a two-parent household. Not only a two-parent household, but a household of two parents who were God-fearing. And everyone in my family, from my parents to their siblings, to even my siblings, God had been so faithful and so good to us that all I saw around me were my families and the children being born into households where the mother and the father was there. And so here all of a sudden, for me to experience losing my wife and knowing that my daughter doesn't have the privilege of growing up with her biological mother, it was heartbreaking. Like that's the most heartbreaking thing I think I faced in my life, because I wanted that so much for her. I wanted that so much for our family. But I knew I wasn't myself. And to try to crawl out of that, I had to, like I said earlier, rely on my faith. But I knew I had to do something. And so addressing the question of the importance of, knowing what postpartum was, I knew about it because of the blessing I had in being married to a doctor. So I knew about it. I knew of it. But to say that I knew that I would experience it to the level that I had experienced it, no. But seeking the help and understanding yourself. Like for me, I'm a natural jokester. I love to make people laugh. I love to be silly. And I was at a place in my life like nothing was funny. Nothing was amusing. Like my world just got turned upside down. You know, so for myself, just being self-aware, I just knew like I need some help, you know, and if I want to be the father that God created me to be, I knew I needed to talk to someone. So it's very important, like you said, and we've been reiterating, just make sure that you talk to someone. It's very important for us to just open up, be vulnerable. So, yeah.
One of the things that we kind of see when I was having children, when I and my wife were having children, I've got 5 daughters, again, like I said. The concept of postpartum depression still was not really recognized or even extolled. They would say, well, she just got the baby blues. That's what they would say. So as a young man, I kind of, as she would withdraw, I kind of took that personally. And so the thing that I talk to, as this is being recognized more, when I talk to young people in the church, I ask them to recognize this. And I ask the fathers to recognize it as well, because I know a lot of other fathers who took that personally as well. And so one of the things that I did as a young father was I thought that being just more involved would help. And it wasn't just being more involved, but it was being attentive and making sure that not always in her face, are you okay, are you okay, are you okay? That wasn't it. But making sure I was attentive, making sure I was helping, that there's a father and a mother helping taking care of the children. I even had a day where, since I went back to work and she was going to stay at home for a while, I had the baby at work with me. So this is nothing new, having kids at work with me. Having them climb all over everything. But you have to be, like you said, willing to recognize, one, wellness is holistic. It's mind, body, and spirit. So you have to be willing to talk about those things. If you're having those issues right after the baby's born, like I said, don't internalize that and take it personally like I did. You know, you go see someone, you talk about it, you get that out. And be attentive to the mother, because she's going through that as well. She's got a lot of things going on after the baby's born. I don't think we always recognize that.
I would like to just echo and concur with everything that everybody has said already. However, I think directly to your question, I believe we all love the Lord. We have that personal relationship. But I think that we have to come to a place of understanding. And for a lot of preachers, they couldn't even identify with it themselves. So a lot of things, this is just real talk, a lot of things that we like to blame on the devil are things that we have to come in contact with and become aware of ourselves. And this is not to take anything away from the power of God, because I believe absolutely in the power of God. I believe in trusting Him with all of my heart. And at the same time, for me, God has allowed me to experience some things so that I would be aware of exactly what it was that I was dealing with. I'm just a believer that there are psychological things that we deal with as human beings. Even our love for the Lord, even in our trust in Him. The scripture talks about that He won't put any more on us than we can bear. But my question comes back, how much do we bring on ourselves simply because we don't know?
What disobedience?
So the fact that coming to that place of understanding, okay, preachers need to be preached to sometimes too. Preachers need to be able to go sit down. We have the pastor's trench where we supposed to be able to come and sit down, and we supposed to be able to unload the things that you just really care. Because most of the time, people want preachers to be Superman. I want to be Clark Kent sometimes. I want to be able to go and sit down with someone and to say, listen, Dave, man, this is how I feel. I remember one time I was at church speaking, and I literally said across the pulpit, I said, there's some days I just feel like knocking somebody upside the head. And this little old lady sitting over in the corner, Dr. Rose, she said, oh my God. Well, the reality is there are some days I feel like that. You know, and again, coming up in ministry, I've been at it for a couple of days now. And the one most important thing that I found out, not only about ministry, but about life, and that is that the more you know, the more you need to know.
Right.
So there are things that even from the ministerial perspective, we weren't able to identify with that because we didn't know. Now I think that one of the most important things is, again, the intimacy and the relationship with God, who reveals all things through His Spirit. And we have to come to that place. So yes, we've dealt with that quite often. And still do.
Can I just caveat one quick? I know we're short on time, but just to piggyback on what Pastor Luster said, I mentioned about going to my pastor, and he said preachers sometimes are expected to be Superman. I know we have expectations. Well, my grandmother taught me something. Now, this is the person in whose bosom I have my earliest memories. And she said that knowledge plus experience equals wisdom. She said there are a lot of people who know stuff, but they ain't never done nothing. And there are a lot of people who do stuff, they don't know what they're doing. But when you have knowledge plus experience, then you have wisdom. And preachers, a lot of time, if God places, or the Holy Spirit places on our hearts, we preach a certain thing, but that don't necessarily mean we've had experience with that thing. And so sometimes God has to take us through that experience in order to make it real, so that when we preach it with that and with that wisdom. And I can say, I know what I'm talking about because I've been through that.
That's good. So I'll open it up to the audience before I ask probably one of our last questions. Let's see if anybody has any questions for the panelists before I go to the next. Dr.
I don't have a question, but I just have a comment. When Dr. Velvet sent me those questions, I asked my husband, my 80-year-old husband, those questions, and he helped us to keep them some, you know. But when I asked him about the postpartum, I said, honey, do you remember, did I go through postpartum? And you know what? I was really surprised when he said, I don't know whether you did or not, because I really don't know what that is. And he's an educator man. Yeah. And he said, and then I said, why? You don't know. He said, because you were saying nothing changed. He said, but what I did notice when you had to have your hysterectomy, I noticed a change. And he said, was that something you're talking about? I said, that's exactly. So it's all right if you don't know what it was, but that you felt it and knew what's going on with me when I had that experience and helped me through that.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And so the last question I have for the panelists is, so some of you probably gonna have to go back 50 years to try to think about this, but recalling when you first arrived home with that and your first newborn, what was the biggest adjustment you had to make? Anthony, I'll put you first since keep you closer and let them think about it.
Yeah, we can let them think about it. When I first, my experience is unique. I remember leaving the hospital and once again, just wishing Shanice, my wife, was with us. You know, in my mind and in my head, just had it all planned out. You know, initially before how it would look, how it would feel, and so it was like the exact opposite of the idea that I had in my mind. Instead of it being one of full of joy, even though, you know, my daughter brings me so much joy. But at the same time, I think at the same time it was sad. It was depressing. It was hurtful. I was angry. Nothing was like I wanted it to be. So coming home, I had my daughter, and like I said, that was something that to be happy about, but not having the full picture, the picture not being complete, the feeling not being complete of my wife being absent was something that just, like I said, made it sad. So for me, to sum it up, it was bittersweet. I could look at the upside of it, but also I was living in the downside of it as well. But that's why I also, you know, that's how I know, because the work can be so tough. You know, God orchestrated it for us to be husband and wife, and then for us together to birth children, to bring forth fruit, to be fruitful and multiply. You know, and so I wouldn't wish it on anyone that, you know, that they would have to, you know, be a single parent, because it's a tough work. But and I just want to commend all the Black women who don't get the credit or the knowledge, the acknowledgement that they deserve. You know, because Black women have been doing it for years. You know, but I'm also appreciative of this space, you know, of fathers being included, because, you know, we are seeing the turn, we are seeing a change in men stepping up to the plate, men answering a call, Black men being involved in their families and being involved in their children's lives. And so I want to commend all the men out there who are stepping up, you know, to the plate as well. But for me, bittersweet, and but I can say today, you know, God is healing, and I'm happy. I'm loving fatherhood. It's what I was created for, and something I'm loving doing. So, yeah.
Who got the first memory? What was that big adjustment?
First of all, with 5 daughters, nothing is ever what you think it's going to be. Nothing's ever, and they get bigger as you go on. So with the first one, we thought that, okay, since she's going to be home, she'll breastfeed, and that baby would not latch, would not take to the breast at all. So I would be up in the middle of the night so that she could get rest and be up during the day, and I was feeding. This one's mother was 13 pounds delivered vaginally. Ooh. And she came out talking about, I want sandwiches. Right. So she was big, and she was already, as a baby, pushing herself up, and I knew she couldn't even see yet. So she was just one who, required a lot of time. Like I said, they get bigger as they go on. So when that one came out 13 pounds, I'm like, the next one will be a bear. So, but she wasn't. She was quite a bit smaller. But they all, just when you think one of them's going to do one thing, they don't do that. It's something else. This one's mother would not sleep through the night. She was just up, and it wasn't like she was screaming all the time. She was just up. And so I had one that did scream all the time. I had one that just cooed all the time. And then the last one slept all the time. So it's never, don't get pigeonholed into thinking that this is what the baby's gonna be like, because every one of them is different. Some of them you get good sleep time with, some of them will be very engaging, some of them, I had one that was, bilirubin levels were really off, so she had to stay under the light for a long time. She was kind of sickly for the first month and a half. So there's always something, it's never what you expect, so don't get into the mindset that this is exactly what it's going to be like, because then you kind of, you get tricked or you get disappointed or whatever. It's going to be different with each child. It's going to be different, so just be open, be ready.
Well, I was 26 years old when my first child was born. In 1976, I was in Hawaii, in the Navy. First marriage, first child. And even though I was born out of wedlock, there was never a time until I was maybe about 10 where both my parents were not in the home. They just weren't married. There's a whole story behind that, but eventually they ended up getting divorced. So I grew up in a very spiritual home with both parents and spiritual people on both sides of my family. My mother's father was a preacher. My father's mother was, still to this day, I don't know too many people who was more spiritual than she was. And so, I was happy that, by the time I had my first child, I was married, so she wasn't born out of wedlock. But the woman that I was married to was, I didn't find out until it was too late. She was way faster than me. And, I'm in the Navy. I got to be at work at 7:30 every morning. And sometimes she would be just getting home at 4 o'clock in the morning. And I'm been up all night with the baby. And now I got to get dressed, put on my uniform, and go to work, and be wondering have all this stuff on my mind, And so she would seem like always try to find some type of an excuse to leave the house and leave me alone with the baby. And at first I resented that, but then I realized, because like I said, this is the one who my face was all over her face. And I just loved it to death, and I loved it to life, I should say. And I enjoyed spending time with her, But the challenge was not with her, it was with her mother, And I think when both parents, when a child is blessed and fortunate to have both parents, then they have to, both parents realize that it's a co-responsibility. The man can't say, well, you the woman, you have to take care of the babies, I can't breastfeed this baby, you gotta be there, Or for the woman to say, well, I had him, or so you the one gotta raise him and take care of him. I carried him for 9 months, now it's your turn, that kind of stuff don't work. We both have to realize that this is a blessing from God, and both of you are responsible. Both of you will be able to benefit from it, and both of you will be able to make some sacrifices.
Could I just divert just for a moment? I don't promise you, I'll come back to it. One, I think that this is an issue that, this is a great time in what we're doing, but this is a little bit more exhaustive, I believe, because there's some issues to me that when we look at this again, we speak off the cuff sometimes and don't realize, again, I use the word psychological because there's some psychological things here in between the stories, the issues, the events that take place that really, even in the development of a father today, there's some psychological things that we're challenged with as men. And listen, kudos to every woman on the planet, and especially our black women. After I had the opportunity of experiencing, watching my wife go through what she went through, and still standing tall as a mother, as a woman, you know, my hat goes off to every woman, because y'all can have it. I'm not trying to have no babies. That y'all can have. I had a surgery one time, appendicitis. And the pain I experienced with that, they said, childbirth is worse than that. My head goes off to y'all. Y'all can have that. God bless y'all. He knew he needed to get that too.
Yeah.
But the joy, the original, the first joy for me was the ability to be able to look at what God had did between my wife and myself, and what He allowed us to produce. In the fact of understanding that only in God can we be creators like God. And then to be able to have this child that you literally, I listened to Dr. Ruth talk about her baby and how even on that pillow, but it was still something that God allowed her to experience, to do. But the fact that He allowed us, my wife and myself, and this was the product, this is the byproduct of that. So the fact that now what we call family, being able to reproduce, being able to look at this child, you know, and saying, wow, I was just astonished. Even in listening to all the things that I heard both doctors talk about, even in going through whatever you're going through, while you're going through it, still this is something that God allowed you to contribute to, something that only He can do. So when I looked at that, that was just astounding for me. And I'm still amazed when I really stop and think about it. My daughters are probably the biggest headaches that I have, but they're my daughters, you know. And I say they're loving me, don't get me wrong. But just to be able to look at that first bringing them home, is like, wow, family.
Well, with that, I want to just give a round of applause to our panelists and thank you all.